Hello, my name's Jacob. I'm a psychologist here at STNA Psychology, and today I want to talk about perfectionism and depression. I've seen a number of clients where they come to the clinic wanting some support with depression, coping with low mood and low motivation. After some time with those clients, we discovered that there's actually a lot of perfectionism that might be contributing to or maintaining their depression. And so there's been good evidence to show that people who are more prone to perfectionism or who are perfectionists are more at risk of struggling with anxiety and with depression. And so I want to talk about that today. So what do we mean by perfectionism? I've got a good definition here by Shafran and colleagues, and they say that perfectionism is the setting of and striving for very demanding standards that are self-imposed and relentlessly pursued, despite this causing problems. So it involves basing one's self-worth almost exclusively on how well these standards are met. So when it comes to perfectionism, no matter how much you achieve or how much you do, it's never good enough. That's our understanding of how perfectionism works. And the better you do, and the worse you end up feeling. So what are the processes involved in perfectionism that can contribute to depression? And again, we're going to refer to Shafran and colleagues, use their model of perfectionism and how this can map onto depression. And so when it comes to perfectionism, the pervasive ways of thinking and behaving, really it comes down to a person's self-worth mainly being dependent on their achievement and their striving and how well they're achieving things. And so if that's happening, I guess it's a sense of this low self-esteem initially, and then having these really rigid standards and really high expectations to counter that sense of low self-worth or low self-esteem. And so when that's at play, these rigid standards, these expectations, they're those musts and shoulds and coulds. I must be the best at what I'm doing. I must always do the right thing. I should always be the best worker, the best partner, the best student. I must never let people down. All those really absolute black and white ways of thinking. And if that's the case, if that's happening a lot, what can happen then is this person with these really high standards and expectations of themselves gets faced with a task, and there's kind of three potential outcomes then to completing a task. And one way could be the person temporarily meets the standard that they have set for themselves, but almost immediately there's this undermining of their own achievement. It's that sense of, oh, if I've done it, then it's not that hard, it's not that tough, or it's expected that I should be able to do this. It's the minimum expectation. Everyone else can do it. There's nothing special about it. So straight away after this successfully meeting those standards, there's that undermining of the achievement. And what can happen then is, there's that self-criticism. I should have been able to do it better, quicker, with more gusto. There's a sense of it not being good enough, and this self-criticism that happens. What happens then, it just feeds back on itself and impacts the person's self-worth or self-esteem. And so that's the one outcome. The other outcome of completing the task can be not meeting the standard. And straight away there's this self-criticism. I wasn't good enough. I was too slow. I didn't quite hit the mark. And again, that sense of berating oneself for for the failure, the perceived failure. And again, that feeds back into that sense of self-worth. Or the person can avoid the task altogether, procrastinate, put it aside, put it off. And ultimately what happens then is, again, that self-criticism, I'm so lazy, I'm so stupid, I'm so silly. Or the person puts off the task until the last minute and then does a quick job of it and then feels they haven't met the standards. And again, the self-criticism feeding back into the person's self-worth and self-esteem. And so ultimately what that means is, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, it's never good enough. There's always this sense of self-criticism that comes after whatever you do. So regardless if you meet the standards or not, it's not enough, it's not good enough. So the more you try, the more you achieve, the worse you feel. And that's where depression can come into this process of perfectionism. So what do we do about that? What can we help with? Well, in therapy, there's a number of ways of addressing this and starting to work with someone to help support them with this negative feedback loop, this cycle that people can get stuck in. So one way could be looking at these rigid standards, these rules and expectations, and the black and white thinking when it comes to what's expected of yourself. And really in therapy then it's about generating some flexibility around these really rigid standards and expectations. Making more of a gray area so it's not so black and white, and having some room to breathe. It could also, in therapy, involve us looking at this sense of undermining the process of undermining the achievement, helping someone to take stock and recognize their achievements, and be able to praise themselves and receive praise for their achievements, and for it not to feed straight back into the self-criticism. We might also look at this part here, so the avoiding, the procrastination. Ultimately, if this is happening a lot, it perpetuates the process, perpetuates the self-criticism. So, helping someone to incrementally and gradually tackle tasks and complete the work, and instead of being very, very goal-focused, it might involve exploring some values around the task itself, and what are some ways that they can still act in ways that are aligned with those values. Maybe not hitting all the goals, but still moving in the right direction. We can also look at the self-criticism itself, ultimately being able to foster greater self-compassion. So in therapy, these are all ways that we can support someone who might feel stuck in this cycle. So thank you for your time.